Today we're going to talk about precipitation, the lifting of air, and the different types of fronts. Precipitation forms in two ways: collision coalescence and aggregation. Collision coalescence is when small droplets are falling and collide together to create larger droplets. These large droplets fall faster and therefore reach the surface before evaporating. Aggregation is when super-cold water and ice crystals combine. They grow rapidly and connect to other crystals and fall to the surface. Rain is water droplets that fall to the ground. Freezing rain is rain that falls and freezes as it hits the surface, whereas sleet is rain that freezes before it hits the surface. These are both collision coalescence processes. Aggregated weather processes are snow and rain. Snow is ice crystals that fall that are formed when it's below freezing. Rain is also an aggregated weather process, which is when it falls as snow but melts before it hits the surface, which is different than the collision coalescence process. Hail is when droplets are taken upward through a high updraft in clouds where temperatures are freezing. These collide with other droplets and therefore fall as hail. For hail to occur, there needs to be cumulonimbus clouds because cumulonimbus clouds are high enough for the droplets in the air to have this high updraft. Let's talk about lifting of air. It's important because lifting of air creates cloud formation and precipitation, thus giving us the fresh water that we need to survive. There's 4 types of lifting of air, but we're going to focus on orthographic and frontal. Orthographic lifting is when air hits an obstacle such as hills or mountains and goes up. On the windward side, which is the left side, it begins to cool and there's precipitation that may occur. I've drawn and colored in green on this side to show that this is a side that has the water and therefore has more growth opportunities. Once the wind and air goes up, it begins to cool and passes the obstacle. This goes to the leeward side where the air sinks and dries and warms up the area. Frontal wedging is when two very different temperatures, like hot and cold air, collide with one another. Cold air acts as a barrier and forces warm air to rise. There are 4 types of frontal wedgings, or fronts, which is cold, warm, stationary, and occluded. Let's talk about these 4 types of fronts. The first front is a cold front. This is when cold air in the direction of the front is going in the same direction. It pushes up the warm air, thus having the cold air take over. In the top left, I've drawn the symbol that you may see for cold fronts on the map. A warm front is when the direction of the front and the warm air is the same. The cold air is coming from the opposite direction and the warm air takes over. In the top left, you can see the symbol for warm front on the map. The third type of front is a stationary front. This is when cold air and warm air neither have the force to move each other. Winds are blowing in opposite directions on each side, thus making the air both stationary. In the top left corner, you can see the symbol for stationary fronts on the map. The final front is the occluded front. This is when cold fronts or warm fronts take over one another. It depends on the air behind the front if it's warm or cold occluded, as well as the direction of the front. In the left corner, you can see that both the warm front and the cold front symbols are shown. That's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope you've learned more about the types of fronts, the lifting of air and why it's important to us, as well as precipitation and its weather occurrences.